On July 14, 2017, 21-year-old Wanda Fisher left a nightclub in Las Vegas and disappeared into the darkness. The police were sure that the girl had simply run away with another client, so they did not even begin an active search. But exactly 3 days later, employees of the old motel opened the door of a locked washing machine and found her body inside. Who did it, how she ended up there, and what fatal mistake the killer made? You will find out in this video. Enjoy. Some names and details in this story have been changed for reasons of anonymity and privacy. Thank you for your understanding. On July 12, 2017, Las Vegas, Nevada was still hot even at 3 in the morning. The thermometers on the boulevard read 88 degrees Fahrenheit. The air was dry, thick, and saturated with the smell of gasoline and heated asphalt. It was at this time that 21-year-old Wanda Fisher pushed open the heavy service door of the Sapphire Club, ending her shift. It was a good night for Wanda. According to her co-workers, who later testified to the police, she looked tired but was in high spirits. She had about $400 in cash in her small bag, a generous tip she had earned for 6 hours of work on stage. She planned to save the money to pay the rent of the apartment she shared with a friend on the outskirts of the city. Surveillance cameras installed on the building's facade and facing the parking lot captured her leaving at exactly 3 o'clock 5 minutes. The black and white footage shows the girl's slender figure quickly crossing the lot, heading toward an old navy blue Chevrolet parked in the far row under a dim streetlight. She walked confidently, not looking back, keeping the keys at the ready. Nothing in her demeanor indicated anxiety or fear. At 3 o'clock 8 minutes, Wanda got into the car. The recording shows the brake lights flashing as she stepped on the brake pedal, followed by a weak headlight that came on and almost immediately went out. She tried to start the engine once, twice, and 3 times. The old starter made only dull, strained sounds, but the engine was silent. The Chevrolet had been unreliable for several months, and Wanda had repeatedly complained to her neighbor about problems with the battery and ignition system. At 3 o'clock 12, the car's interior lights came on. Wanda took out her cell phone. The call details obtained by the investigation later showed that she made only one outgoing call lasting 42 seconds. Who exactly she was calling remained a question that would arise later, but at the time, it looked like a simple call to an acquaintance asking for help. She did not call a tow truck. She didn't call a taxi service. She just sat in the stuffy car, waiting. Exactly 15 minutes later, at 3 o'clock 27 minutes, a black sedan with tinted windows slowly pulled into the parking lot. The model of the car in the video is blurred due to the poor quality of the night footage and the blinding light of the streetlights, but it resembled a middle-class car produced in the early 2000 years. The sedan stopped close to the driver's door of the Chevrolet. Wanda got out of her car. She did not hesitate. The video shows her walking up to the passenger window of the sedan, leaning in, exchanging a few words with the driver, and then calmly opening the door and getting in. She left her car locked in the club's parking lot. The sedan turned around and drove out onto the main road, disappearing into the stream of Vegas nightlights. That was the last time cameras captured Wanda Fisher alive. The morning of July 13th began with silence. At 10 o'clock in the morning, Wanda's mother, who lived in another state, did not receive the usual message. She and her daughter had an unbreakable ritual. Every morning when she woke up after her night shift, Wanda would write a short, "I'm home, everything is fine." This time, the phone was silent. The mother waited for an hour, 2, 3. Toward lunchtime, she started calling, but the call went straight to voicemail. Her roommate, Stacy, also raised the alarm. When she returned home after her shift at the restaurant, she saw that Wanda's bed had not been made. Her friend's things were in the same places as yesterday. Wanda did not come back to spend the night, which was completely out of character for her. She always warned me if she planned to stay with friends, but this time there was no note or call. At 18 hours and 30 minutes on July 13th, Stacy walked into the Las Vegas Police Department to file a missing persons report. The officer on duty listened to her without much enthusiasm. For the Vegas police, the story of a young nightclub dancer who didn't show up for the night after her shift was a routine one. "She's young, she's pretty, and it's Vegas," the officer said, taking the report but not rushing to follow up. Maybe she met someone, went to a party, or just decided to take a break from her phone. Wait for 48 hours. That's standard procedure. Stacy tried to argue, explaining that Wanda had never broken her mother's promises or turned off her phone without warning. She insisted that her old car, found later in the club's parking lot, was proof that something had gone wrong. But the system worked by its own rules. Lifestyle was a stigma that often became a sentence for missing girls in this city. The police did not start searching that evening. 48 hours of silence proved fatal. While friends and family were pestering Wanda's phone, the device was already turned off, somewhere in the dark, far from the shining lights of the Strip. Wanda Fisher disappeared without a trace, leaving behind only a grainy recording of her getting into a black car with an unknown person. On July 15, 2017, the nighttime heat in Las Vegas remained exhausting. At 2:45 p.m, thermometers in the North Las Vegas Boulevard area recorded 84 degrees Fahrenheit. The Neon West Motel on the northern edge of town was almost completely full, but the area remained quiet. This place was chosen by truckers and tourists on a budget who avoided the hustle and bustle of the Strip. According to the schedule, 52-year-old maid Maria Gonzalez was on shift. At 2:55 p.m, she rolled a plastic cart to the service wing to load towels. The laundry room was located in a windowless basement room with a heavy fire door leading to it. It usually smelled of chlorine and cheap fabric softener, but that night Maria smelled a different odor in the hallway. In her statement to the police, she described it as a thick, sweetish stench, like spoiled meat. The source was located against the far wall, where washing machine number 3, an old industrial unit with a 60-pound load, was located. On the round glass door of the machine, a piece of paper with a careless black marker inscription was taped to it. Not in operation. Maria had seen this sign at the beginning of her shift, but had thought the machine was simply out of order. Now, standing 2 feet away from the machine, she realized that the smell was coming from inside the drum, seeping through the rubber seals. The glass of the hatch was dark with condensation, and it was impossible to see the contents. Maria tried to open the door, but the lock was blocked, even though the power cord was lying on the floor, unplugged. At 3:05 p.m, she went up to the front desk and told the night manager, 40-year-old Rick Stevens, about the unbearable stench in the laundry room. Stevens grabbed a toolkit and went downstairs. According to his words recorded in the protocol, the smell was so strong that it made him nauseous. He tried to use the emergency key, but the mechanism was stuck. At 3:15 p.m, the manager used a flathead screwdriver to pry open the lock. The metal scraped, the lock clicked, and the heavy door swung open under the pressure of the mass inside. Not laundry fell out onto the concrete floor. The body of a young woman rolled out of the drum, unnaturally twisted to fit into the confined space. She was wearing the same clothes that Wanda Fisher had disappeared in 3 days earlier, a shiny top and a short skirt. Her body was in a state of rigor mortis. Her limbs were frozen in a bent position. The woman's face was partially covered by tangled blonde hair, but the skin already had characteristic discoloration due to decomposition in high temperatures. Dark bruises were clearly visible on the victim's neck under the harsh light of the lamp. At 3:17 p.m, Rick Stevens dialed the emergency number 911. The recording of the call captures his panicked voice reporting the body found. Police arrived at 3 hours and 28 minutes later. Officers immediately cordoned off the perimeter with yellow tape, blocking the entrance to the laundry and the service exit. The forensic team began work at 4 o'clock in the morning. The initial examination confirmed that the death had occurred several days ago. A "not in business" sign written on the back of a pizza delivery flyer was the first piece of physical evidence. The killer knew that no one would open the faulty machine until Monday and used this to buy time. When the detective examined the body on the spot, he noticed an important detail. There were black grease stains on the victim's shoulder and on the shiny fabric of the top. It was a thick technical grease that could not have come from ordinary dirt in the laundry room. The edge of a piece of paper was also visible in the clenched fist of the girl's right hand. At 5 o'clock 45 minutes, Wanda Fisher's body was loaded into a coroner's van. She spent 3 days in a metal trap just a few yards from people passing by, unaware of the horror behind closed doors. At 4 o'clock 45 minutes in the morning on July 15, 2017, the territory of the Neon West Motel was completely surrounded by yellow police tape. The blue and red lights of the patrol cars were reflected in the windows of the rooms, creating a surreal atmosphere against the pale pre-dawn sky. The motel guests who tried to leave their rooms were politely but firmly asked by the officers to stay inside until the initial investigative actions were completed. The epicenter of activity was centered near the service entrance to the laundry room. A Las Vegas police mobile crime lab had arrived. Technicians wearing white protective suits, shoe covers, and respirators went inside one by one to avoid compromising the integrity of the microtraces in the cramped space. The air in the basement was still heavy and humid, saturated with the smell of decomposition, making it difficult for the experts to work. Wanda Fisher's body was removed from the washing machine drum at 5 o'clock 15 minutes. It was placed on a sterile sheet on the concrete floor for an initial examination. The forensic expert, Dr. Anthony Rivera, immediately noted that the stains on the body were inconsistent with the position in which the victim was found. The stains, which were caused by blood flow after cardiac arrest, were found on the back and back of the thighs, while the body was in a twisted position on its side in the car. In a preliminary report drawn up on the spot, Rivera noted, "Death occurred in a different place and in a different position. The body was moved to the car a considerable amount of time after biological death, when the processes of rigor mortis had already partially formed." This confirmed the detective's version. The laundry room was only a place of concealment, not a murder scene. Wanda Fisher was brought there already dead. The victim was wearing the same clothes that were captured by the Sapphire Club's surveillance cameras on the night of her disappearance: a silver sequin top and a short black skirt. She had no shoes on her feet. One sandal was found at the bottom of the drum. The other sandal was wedged between her foot and the wall of the machine. The clothes were damp with condensation, but not wet, which ruled out the possibility that someone had tried to turn the machine on. During a detailed examination of the victim's neck, the expert found clear signs of mechanical asphyxiation. Dark purple bruises formed a characteristic stripe that was interrupted at the back. Based on the shape and depth of the depressions, Rivera suggested the use of a soft but strong object, possibly the elbow bend of the attacker's arm or a wide belt. The girl's underfoot beds were blue, and despite the tissue changes, there were pinpoint hemorrhages in her eyes, classic signs of strangulation. The struggle was short but intense. At 6 hours and 30 minutes, the forensic experts started collecting microparticles from the clothes. Using special adhesive tapes and ultraviolet light, they scanned every inch of the fabric. On the right shoulder of the top, among the sparkling sequins, the technician noticed a dark, viscous stain that did not dry even when exposed to the high temperature in the drum. A quick test on the spot showed that it was neither blood nor bodily fluid. It was a technical substance. The evidence seizure report reads, "Sample number 4 is a thick black substance, probably graphite grease." Preliminary analysis indicated that such lubricants are used to maintain heavy machinery, elevator shafts, escalators, or industrial gates. The stain had a clear outline, as if someone with contaminated hands had squeezed the girl's shoulder hard or carried her, pressing her against dirty work clothes. The next discovery was even smaller, but no less significant. On the collar of the top, tangled in a decorative thread, the experts found a single hair. It was short, light brown in color, about 1.5 inches long. Wanda's hair was long and platinum, much lighter than the sample found. The forensic scientist carefully packed the find in a paper envelope. This hair could have belonged to the killer and contained his DNA if the root had been preserved. At 7 o'clock in the morning, the detectives began to inventory her personal belongings. Wanda's bag was not with her, nor was her phone. This indicated that the killer had taken these items to complicate identification or hide digital traces. However, he had not checked the pockets of her tight clothing thoroughly enough. In a small, almost decorative skirt pocket, the forensic scientist felt a rolled-up piece of paper. Using tweezers, he pulled out a receipt that was wet and crumpled, but the text on the thermal paper was still legible. It was a fiscal receipt from a quick-stop gas station and convenience store located on Las Vegas Boulevard, a few miles from the Sapphire Club. The time on the receipt, 3 o'clock 42 minutes in the morning, July 12, 2017. This discovery instantly changed the chronology of the investigation. Wanda disappeared from the club's parking lot at 3 hours and 27 minutes. The receipt proved that 15 minutes later, she was still alive and at a gas station. The purchase amounted to $8.50, a bottle of water, a pack of chewing gum, and a lighter. The killer, who tried so hard to hide the body in a locked washing machine, made a fatal mistake. He left a precise indication in the victim's pocket of the time and place where the two of them were that night. This piece of paper became the first real thread that led from the dark basement of the motel back to the night of the disappearance, to a specific location equipped with high-definition cameras. The forest that had been discussed in other cases had been replaced by a concrete jungle, but the traces remained just as clear to those who knew how to look for them. On July 16, 2017, less than 24 hours after Wanda Fisher's body was discovered, homicide detectives obtained a warrant to seize video footage from a quick-stop gas station. The receipt found in the victim's pocket became the time anchor that allowed investigators to narrow the search among thousands of hours of city surveillance to specific minutes. The gas station manager provided access to the archive at 10 o'clock, 15 minutes in the morning. The quality of the recording was better than in the nightclub parking lot because the station had a modern high-resolution security system. The detectives fast-forwarded the recording to 3 o'clock 41 minutes in the morning on July 12th. A black sedan appeared on the screen. It was a streamlined car that experts tentatively identified as a Ford Taurus or Mercury Sable from the early 2000s. The front bumper was missing a license plate, allowed in Nevada under certain conditions, but often used to make identification difficult. The rear license plate was covered with dirt so densely that even digital processing could not recognize the characters. At exactly 3 o'clock 42 minutes, the car stopped at column number 4. Wanda Fisher got out of the passenger seat. She looked calm. Her movements were not constrained. She went into a convenience store, bought water, chewing gum, and a lighter, paid in cash, and got out. This episode lasted 3 minutes. The driver remained in the car the entire time. A camera mounted above the entrance to the store captured part of the car's windshield. The glass glinted under the canopy lights, but in several shots it was possible to make out the silhouette of the driver. He was a large man. He wore a dark-colored baseball cap with a long visor pulled over his eyes. He sat leaning back, one hand on the steering wheel and the other on the door card. His face remained in deep shadow the entire time. Not once did he turn his head toward the cameras or get out of the car to fill up the tank. When Wanda got back in the car, the sedan moved slowly, not toward the city center, but to the north, exactly where the Neon West Motel was located. The timing perfectly matched the route. After receiving visual confirmation of the car, the detectives returned to the motel. They were interested in the guest log for the night of July 11 to 12. The Neon West had no electronic database. All records were kept manually in a large lined book. This made it difficult to search, but gave hope that the receptionist might have remembered the strange customer. The detectives were interested in rooms located as close as possible to the stairs leading to the basement laundry. This was critical, as moving the body across the courtyard would have been too risky. The closest room to the service entrance was room 104, located on the ground floor just 10 yards from the door behind which Wanda was found. In the log opposite room 104, there was an entry. John Smith. The check-in time was 2:15 in the morning, July 12th. Payment was in cash for 1 day. The only information in the car column was black Ford, no license plate. The administrator on duty that night did not ask for an ID, which was a violation of the rules, but a common practice for establishments of this level. However, the investigation was lucky with a witness. The daytime maid, 45-year-old Teresa Mendez, who worked on the morning of July the 12th, remembered the occupant of room 104 well. During the interview, she said that at about 11 o'clock in the morning, the man approached her while she was cleaning the next room. According to her, he did not open the door completely, but only opened it to the length of the security chain. The room was dark and the curtains were drawn tightly, despite the bright day. The man asked for extra towels for large bath towels. This seemed strange to Teresa because he had checked in alone and only for the night. His voice was hoarse, rough, with a specific accent that she described as thick, like a southern accent, but broken, like a person who smokes a lot. In addition to the towels, he voiced a complaint. The man aggressively stated that the bathroom ventilation was too loud and disturbed his sleep. Teresa remembered this detail because she knew that in room 104, the ventilation was broken and did not work at all. But the most important detail provided by the witness was the description of his appearance. Although the man was hiding his face in the shadows of the room and wearing the same baseball cap seen in the gas station video, Teresa noticed something around his neck. When he reached out to pick up the towels, he tilted his head slightly. On the side of his neck, on the right side, almost under his ear, she saw an ink drawing. It was a rough, dark tattoo. Teresa described it as a spider with long legs that seemed to be crawling down the collar of his t-shirt. The drawing looked old, slightly faded, with blurred edges, which is typical of prison inkages made with unprofessional equipment. The officers recorded this description in the protocol as a priority feature for the search. Male, Caucasian, large build, driving a black sedan from the early 2000s, has a hoarse voice and a tattoo of a spider on the right side of his neck. It was no longer a nameless ghost. John Smith had acquired a specific omen that could not be removed, like a baseball cap. The request for additional towels led the detectives to a dark thought. The murder probably took place in room 104, and the perpetrator tried to remove traces of bodily fluids before moving the body to the basement. The forensic team received an order to immediately conduct a second in-depth examination of room 104, using reagents to detect hidden traces of blood, even though the room had already been cleaned after the guest had checked out. The investigation ended up with a face, or at least a part of it, engraved in ink on the skin. On July 17, 2017, at 8:30 in the morning, an operational meeting was held in the conference room of the Las Vegas Police Homicide Division under the leadership of lead detective Mark Gates. Photos from the crime scene were pinned to a white board. The body in the washing machine drum, the black sedan in the grainy gas station video, and a sketch of the tattoo compiled from the words of Teresa's maid. A criminal profiler who joined the case emphasized a key detail that narrowed the search to a minimum: location. The laundry room of the Neon West Motel was not a public place. The entrance to it was located in the semi-basement, behind a heavy fire door that had no sign. Moreover, the door was equipped with a combination lock. To get inside, you had to know a combination of numbers or have a master key. The profiler's report states, "The offender is familiar with the motel space at the staff level. He knew where the laundry room was located, knew it was unoccupied at night, and likely knew the access code. His actions inside, using the out-of-service sign to disguise his body, indicate an understanding of the facility's internal procedures. This is not a random guest." Based on this conclusion and the available evidence, the investigation identified 3 main suspects. The first on the list was 24-year-old Brian Miller, Wanda Fisher's ex-boyfriend. Their relationship ended 2 months ago, and according to the victim's friend, the breakup was violent. Brian repeatedly tried to get Wanda back, waiting for her outside the club and calling her from different numbers. Most importantly, he owned a black 2005 Ford Taurus, a model that visually matched the car in the video. Brian was brought in for questioning at 11 o'clock, 15 minutes. He was nervous, but categorically denied any involvement. It took 3 hours to verify his alibi. Detectives received data from his player card at one of the local casinos. The electronic system recorded that on the night of the murder, from 2 in the morning to 5 in the morning, Brian was at a gaming table at the Boulder Station Casino. The casino security cameras confirmed this. The man did not leave the gaming room during the critical period of time. Brian Miller was crossed off the list of suspects. The second candidate was 50-year-old Arthur Vines, the owner of the Neon West Motel. He had unrestricted access to all the premises, knew the alarm codes, and had master keys to all the rooms, including room 104. Vines lived in an annex behind the main office and often checked on the night shifts. However, during the inspection, it became clear that Vines had serious health problems that limited his physical capabilities. Carrying a body weighing more than 100 pounds down the stairs to the basement would have been an impossible task for him. In addition, on the night of the murder, he was in Valley Hospital with his wife, who had undergone surgery. Medical records and testimony from the nurses on duty confirmed his presence in the room until 7 in the morning. There was still a third, most promising version, which emerged after a detailed study of the motel's personnel documents. While reviewing the personal files of former employees, the detectives came across the file of 38-year-old Kenneth Rogers. He had been working at the Neon West as a handyman for 6 months and was fired on June 16th, exactly 1 month before the murder. The reason for the dismissal was numerous complaints from guests about the disappearance of personal belongings and Rogers' aggressive behavior while intoxicated. His duties included plumbing maintenance, air conditioning repair, and minor repairs in the laundry room. This meant that he knew the layout of the building, the location of surveillance cameras and blind spots, and the access codes to the service doors, which the administration had not changed after his dismissal. But the decisive detail was the photo in his personal file. In the photo taken for the security pass, Kenneth Rogers was photographed in profile. A tattoo was clearly visible on the right side of his neck, going down from the ear to the collar, a black spider with long, curved legs. During a second interview, motel manager Rick Stevens recognized the former employee and added another detail. Rogers was nicknamed Spider by the staff because of this drawing. Stevens also recalled that Kenneth drove an old black sedan that he often parked in the backyard to avoid paying for parking. At 2 o'clock in the afternoon, the detectives queried the vehicle database. A black Ford 500, made in 2006, was registered in Kenneth Rogers' name. The registration address pointed to a rented trailer in a park on the eastern edge of the city. The profile fit perfectly. A laid-off employee who held a grudge, knew all the entrances and exits, had the right car, and a specific appearance. Kenneth Rogers turned from a former handyman into the prime suspect in the murder of Wanda Fisher. The capture team received an order to leave. On July 18, 2017, at 9:15 in the morning, a report from the Las Vegas Crime Laboratory came across the desk of Senior Detective Mark Gates. The document contained the results of a spectral analysis of a black substance taken from Wanda Fisher's clothes and shoulder. The chemists determined that it was not the usual automotive dirt found on the road. The conclusion read, "The sample is a high-temperature graphite grease containing molybdenum disulfide. This specific compound is rarely used in household engines, but is the standard for lubricating the exposed mechanisms of lifts, hydraulic presses, and industrial gate guides." For the investigation, this was a direct indication of the suspect's professional activities. Kenneth Rogers, according to the IRS, had been working as a mechanic's assistant at Eastside Auto Repair on Nellis Boulevard for the past month. At 11 o'clock 40 minutes, a team of detectives arrived at the shop. It was a large shed with 3 bays that smelled of rubber and solvent. Kenneth Rogers was in an inspection pit under an old pickup truck. When called, he climbed out, wiping his hands on a dirty rag. Officers immediately noticed a tattoo on his neck, a black spider crawling out from behind the collar of his work overalls, matching the description of the motel witness. The conversation took place right in the box, as the detectives did not yet have an arrest warrant, only a search warrant for the car and interrogation. According to the officer who recorded the conversation, Rogers was visibly nervous. His hands were shaking, he avoided eye contact, and kept shifting from one foot to the other. When asked about Wanda Fisher, he answered with a sharp refusal. "I don't know any Wanda. I don't go to clubs." When asked about the Neon West Motel, he admitted that he had worked there, but claimed that he had not been near the place since he was fired. While Gates kept the suspect under psychological pressure, another group of forensic scientists surrounded a black Ford 500 parked in the backyard of the workshop. The car was covered with a layer of desert dust, but the license plate matched Rogers' registration. At 12 o'clock 10 minutes, the search of the vehicle began. The interior looked abandoned. Fast food packages, old newspapers, and empty cigarette packs were lying on the seats. However, the main attention was focused on the trunk. According to the investigators' theory, it was here that the killer transported the body from the place of death to the motel. Visually, the trunk carpeting looked clean, as if it had recently been vacuumed, in stark contrast to the dirty interior. The forensic team used powerful flashlights with a variable light spectrum. They noticed a barely visible dark spot on the gray trim in the far left corner. A quick test confirmed that it was the same graphite grease. The stain was shaped like an elbow or shoulder print, indicating that the contaminated object had been forcefully pressed against the bottom of the trunk. At 12 hours and 35 minutes, one of the technicians lifted the false panel covering the spare tire recess. Underneath, in the gap between the body metal and the plastic lining, something glinted in the flashlight. The technician used tweezers to pull out a tiny object. It was a rhinestone, a small faceted stone made of artificial crystal, no more than 1/4 of an inch in diameter. It had a distinctive flat base with glue residue and a microscopic thread of silver fabric. Detectives who saw Wanda Fisher's body immediately recognized this element. Her stage top was embroidered with exactly the same stones. Presumably, the rhinestone came off when the killer roughly pushed or pulled the body out of the trunk and rolled into a hard-to-reach crevice where it could not be reached by a vacuum cleaner brush. This discovery was irrefutable evidence. It physically linked Kenneth Rogers' car to the victim. The rhinestone could not have gotten into the closed trunk niche by accident. Combined with traces of a specific lubricant that was on Wanda's body and in the suspect's car, the circle of evidence closed. When Detective Gates received word of the discovery on his radio, his tone changed. He interrupted Rogers' stream of denials with a single phrase, reporting the discovery of a piece of the missing girl's clothing in his car. Witnesses noted that at this point, Kenneth Rogers stopped wiping his hands. He turned pale, dropped his shoulders, and fell silent, realizing that his version of innocence had crumbled to dust right in the middle of the dirty garage. His wrists were handcuffed at exactly 12 o'clock 42 minutes. On July 18, 2017, at 14 hours 30 minutes, In Interrogation Room 2 of the Las Vegas Police Department, Kenneth Rogers asked for a glass of water. After 5 hours of denials and silence, when he was presented with photographs of the rhinestone found in his trunk and the results of the oil analysis, he stopped resisting. The video shows him putting his head down on his folded arms, taking a deep breath, and starting to speak. His confession chronicled an obsession that turned into a fatal crime. According to Rogers, he first saw Wanda Fisher 3 months ago at the Sapphire Club. He was not a wealthy client, did not order private dances or buy expensive drinks. He came on days when the entrance was cheaper, sat in the darkest corner of the room, and just watched. The interrogation report records his words. "She was a light in that pit. I thought that if I could just talk to her, she would realize that I was a normal guy." This passive fixation was quickly followed by active action. Rogers admitted that he followed her several times after her shift, studying her route and schedule. He knew where she parked her old Chevrolet, and he knew that the car often broke down. That's what gave him the idea for the plan. On the night of July 11th to 12th, while Wanda was working, Rogers sneaked into the parking lot. He admitted to crawling under the front bumper of her car and loosening the terminal on the starter, not enough to be visually noticeable, but enough to make the contact disappear when she tried to start the engine. On July 12th, he was waiting for her. When Wanda was unable to start the car, he pulled up just as her despair was reaching its peak. Rogers played the role of accidental savior. He offered to give her a ride home, but as soon as she got in, his plan changed. Instead of going to her address, he said he had to stop by the Neon West Motel to collect a debt from a friend of his. Wanda, tired from her shift, didn't mind. At 3:40, they pulled into a gas station, a moment captured on camera. Rogers told investigators that he had not planned the murder at the time. He hoped he could convince the girl to spend time with him. When they arrived at the motel and entered room 104, the situation instantly spiraled out of control. In a cramped, stuffy room with no working ventilation, Rogers tried to hug Wanda. She pushed him away and demanded that he take her home. When he locked the door, she realized it was a trap. Wanda started screaming. That scream became the trigger. Rogers, who had been on probation for assault in 2015, instantly panicked. In his testimony, this moment is described chaotically. "I was scared. I knew that if someone called the cops, I would go to jail. I didn't want to go to jail. I just wanted her to shut up." He pushed her onto the bed. When Wanda tried to hit him and scratch his face, he grabbed her by the throat. He claimed that he had not calculated the force. His hands, used to rough mechanical work, squeezed the girl's neck harder than he realized. The struggle lasted less than 2 minutes. When Wanda stopped moving, he held her for some time, afraid to let her go. At 4:15 in the morning, he realized she was dead. In room 104, just a few yards from the sleeping guests, lay a body. Panic gave way to the cold calculation of a man who knew the territory. Rogers remembered the laundry room. He knew that no one was there at night. He knew that machine number 3 had a faulty lock that could be jammed if the door was hit hard. He wrapped the body in the room's bedspread so as not to leave any traces in the corridor and took it out to the service entrance. The corridor was empty. In the laundry room, he forced the body into the drum of the machine. Wanda was petite, but he had to break the resistance of the already lifeless body to close the hatch. It was then that he came up with the last detail of his plan. He found an old pizza flyer in his pocket, tore out a piece of paper, and wrote, "Not working," with the marker he always carried in his overalls pocket. He knew the motel rules. Maids don't touch broken appliances until the repairman arrives. And the repairman wasn't due until Monday. That gave him 3 days. After hanging up the sign, he returned to room 104, hastily gathered up the bedding that might have shown signs of struggle, and left the motel before dawn. He believed that the time he had gained would be enough to pack his bags and leave the state. But he hadn't accounted for one thing: the gas station receipt that remained in Wanda's pocket and the old rhinestone that had rolled under the trunk lining. His plan was ruined by the very things he had overlooked in his panic. On November 20th, 2017, just 4 months after Kenneth Rogers' arrest, the trial began in the Clark County District Court. The case, which had every chance of becoming another grouse in the endless list of missing persons in the Nevada desert, became a telling example of how small details can ruin perfect plans. The courtroom was packed. The story of the dancer found in the washing machine had caused a significant response in the local press. The prosecutor based his case not on emotions, but on the cold facts of forensic science. The 12 jurors were presented with key evidence that left no room for doubt. The first was a gas station receipt found in the victim's pocket, which precisely established the time when she was still alive and near the killer. The second was a microscopic rhinestone from Wanda's stage costume, recovered from the suspect's trunk. This small, shiny stone physically linked Rogers' car to the crime scene. But the strongest argument was the video of the interrogation. The jury listened in silence as Rogers, at first confident and bold, gradually broke down under the weight of the evidence and described the moment of the murder. His words that he just wanted her to shut up, and the subsequent detailed description of hiding the body in the laundry room, made a depressing impression. The defense tried to appeal to the state of affect and the lack of premeditation, insisting on the qualification of involuntary manslaughter. The lawyer argued that Rogers' actions were the result of panic, not cruelty. However, these arguments fell apart when the prosecutor recalled the defendant's actions after the girl's death. He did not call an ambulance or try to provide assistance. Instead, he coldly used his knowledge of the motel's opening hours, wrote a false closed sign, and went to bed, leaving the body in a metal drum. This was the behavior of a man who valued his own freedom above human life. The trial lasted less than a week. On December 1st, 2017, after 3 hours of deliberations, the jury announced the verdict: guilty of first-degree murder. The judge, taking into account the cynical way the body was hidden and the defendant's previous criminal history, passed the harshest possible sentence. Kenneth Rogers was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. He listened to the verdict, staring at the table, never looking up at the victim's family sitting in the front row. 2 weeks after the trial ended, on a gloomy December morning, Wanda's mother, 50-year-old Elaine Fisher, came to the Las Vegas Central Police Station. She had to go through the last, most difficult formality: to pick up her daughter's personal belongings, which were no longer needed by the investigation as evidence. The officer brought out a small cardboard box. It contained the items that made up Wanda's entire life on that fateful night: the keys to her apartment, the cheap jewelry she had taken off before work, and the same silver top, now cleaned but forever marked with the story of her death. Elaine signed the documents in silence, her hand shaking. Several reporters met her at the exit of the police station. They were waiting for a comment, hoping for an emotional statement about the fairness of the verdict. But the woman was not talking about the trial or the killer. She was looking at the horizon, where the casino skyscrapers began, which even in the daytime looked like giant scenery. Her words, recorded on the journalist's dictaphones, became the epitaph for this case. She said quietly but firmly, "This city lives off the dreams of young girls. It beckons them with bright neon lights, promises a beautiful life and quick money. But when the lights go out, these lights only create long shadows. And in those shadows, in the cheap motels on the outskirts, predators are hiding, for whom our children are just prey." Wanda Fisher never realized her dream of leaving Vegas and starting her own business. She will forever remain a 21-year-old in the memory of her friends and in police photographs. A year later, the Neon West Motel changed its name and renovated, trying to erase the association with the horrific discovery in the laundry room. But among local dancers and club workers, the story turned into a grim warning. They told it to the new girls in the locker rooms: never get into a strange car, even if the driver seems familiar, and never believed that the night city can be safe. Wanda's case was closed, but her name became a reminder that the price of trust in Las Vegas can be too high.